Welcome to the 700 Club. The threat of an all-out war in the Middle East is intensifying. Iranian-backed forces have launched a wave of attacks against U.S. and Israeli targets in the region.
The White House accuses Tehran of provoking the crisis and prompting an American military response. George Thomas has more.
The Islamic mullahs in Tehran have dubbed it their axis of resistance.
What the supreme leader there calls his ring of fire around Israel is to build up these terror groups, these proxies for Iran, to do the fighting for Iran so that Iran doesn't have anybody come knocking on its doorstep.
Since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, Iranian proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen have dramatically upped their strikes against Israel and U.S. interests in the region.
Iran didn't arm and equip and train and finance the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Shia militia groups in Iraq to use these resources for their own benefit at their own discretion. Iran did all that so it would have a capability through its proxies to act as it's acting now.
The U.S. responding with attacks on the proxy militias.
We have taken military action against sites in Iraq and Syria that are also tied to the IRGC, which supports these militias. We have said quite clearly that we hold Iran responsible for the groups, the proxies that it supports and that it provides weapons to.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard forces in just the past week have also launched direct attacks on 3 of their close neighbors, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan. These multiple flashpoints now causing concern of a much broader conflict pitting Iran and its allies against Israel and the United States.
It just shows just how dangerous the situation is in the wider Middle East.
It's all part of their strategy, but ultimately they want us to be fighting these tentacles so that we get bogged down and distracted. What we really need to focus on is the head of the octopus, and that's Iran.
Iranian-backed militias have launched more than 140 rocket and drone attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria since October 7th. The most serious attack happening at the Al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq this past weekend. CENTCOM reporting that a number of U.S. personnel sustained traumatic brain injuries.
It was a very serious attack using a capability, ballistic missiles that pose a genuine threat.
Richard Goldberg, who handled the Iranian portfolio at the White House National Security Council, says such actions show Iran is clearly undeterred and has no reason to rein in its proxies, whether it's Houthi rebels targeting shipping vessels in the Red Sea or militias attacking our U.S. troops in Syria.
But remember, Iran is looking at the big picture here, and the Biden administration's policy is still to give money to Iran while all of this is going on. We have $10 billion flowing from a Biden sanctions waiver today that the Iranians are benefiting from.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, please pray for our State Department and all the advisors and for our administration. Pray that they would wake up to the threat, because the threat, in my view, is obvious, and we should start believing what they say. What they say is that Israel is the little Satan and we are the great Satan. How do you negotiate with that? How do you continue to fund that? They have no interest in peace. They want to wipe Israel off the map. They want to create this vast Muslim empire, reinstate all of that. That's their goal. They hope within the chaos that will come from that a Mahdi will appear in a well in Iran. They hope all of these things. They're quite dedicated to it. So why don't we believe them when they say these things? Why do we say, oh, no, there's peace possible, let's continue negotiations. They aren't really going to try to develop a nuclear weapon. All of the things that are happening right now, the chaos, the various tentacles that are acting and we're being forced to respond, is trying to hide what they are clearly doing. They want to acquire a nuclear weapon. And when they do, we can be assured they will use it. Let us do everything in our power to stop it. In other news, the vast majority of Senate Democrats This is amazing to me, too. They're throwing their support behind a Palestinian state, even though the Palestinians don't want it. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, 49 of 51 Democrat senators signed to a measure emphasizing U.S. policy calls for a, quote, two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii will introduce the amendment to a package sending aid to Israel. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly rejected a Palestinian state. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman are the only two Democrats who don't support the amendment. Schatz says he won't hold up the bill if his measure does not get a vote. Turning now to the southern border and a Texas standoff with the Biden administration over immigration policy. Texas Governor Greg Abbott declares his state has a constitutional right to defend itself, despite federal statutes that stand in the way. He blames the Biden administration for some 6 million migrants crossing illegally over the past 3 years. Earlier this week, Abbott said Texas will still use barbed wire to deter illegal immigration, despite a Supreme Court ruling that federal agents can remove the wire.